Graceful Atheist Podcast. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Thank you to all the supporters of the podcast. If you too would like an ad-free experience of the podcast, you can become a supporter at patreon.com/gracefulatheist. Please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on the Apple Podcast Store and on Spotify, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening. Are you experiencing doubt, the dark night of the soul? The message of this podcast is that you are not alone. There are so many of us out here that have gone through this before, and you do not have to do it by yourself. You can hear stories on this podcast of other people who have gone from doubt to life after faith in a vibrant and healthy way. You can join our Facebook group, Deconversion Anonymous, at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. Way back at the beginning of the podcast, and you can hear this in the first episode, like every atheist podcast or YouTube channel at the time, I wanted to be able to talk to believers. And I framed it in the perspective of an honesty contest. And what I meant by that was there was so much debate and argumentation online at the time that I wanted to have conversations with people where we were talking to one another rather than to our respective audiences. And the idea of this honesty contest was one would have to be vulnerable and honest. The problem with this is that although this podcast has been about rigorous self-honesty and vulnerability, getting a guest on who is willing to actually participate in that is really challenging. So if you look back in the catalog, there's been a few apologists, there's been a pastor or two, and generally, there are congenial conversations, but they aren't particularly deep. They weren't what I was looking for. On the hiatus, I started to realize that I have a number of friends, family, colleagues who I would love to just hear their life story. Some of them are believers and some of them are not. So I'm going to do a number of episodes with people that I know in real life who I think their stories are worth listening to. My first guest in this series is one of my best friends, Mark Anthony Diaz. Mark is very much a believer. You're going to hear that. Crucially, he's one of the believers who stuck with me through my deconversion. We are still friends. We still care for each other. And although I didn't hammer this point of an honesty contest with Mark, he really delivered. He is honest and vulnerable about his life, and I think you're going to love his story. Here is Mark Anthony Diaz. Mark Anthony Diaz, welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
For the audience who doesn't know, you and I have been friends since, I believe, second grade.
Yes.
so you and I think, are closer to brothers in many ways. We spent a lot of time together. We love each other as brothers, and I was really excited to get a chance to have you tell your life story. So I'm trying something new on the podcast here of just bringing some friends and family in, and I'm sure there are like parts of your story that I don't know, but I am convinced that just someone telling their story is really powerful, really effective, and people out in the world will hear your story and hear something that they recognize in their own lives. And so that's what we're here to do. So I know some of the story after second grade, but where we're going to start is before that. What don't I know? Like, what was it like growing up for you? Obviously, the kind of the theme of the podcast is your religious experience.
I was born at a very young age to be in a hospital next to my mother. I grew up in a home with an older brother and younger sister. I was a middle child. I was sick a lot. I had asthma, and with that, it was bronchial asthma, and I was always going in and out of hospitals with my lungs and stuff. But since I've gotten older, it's gotten much better. So I spent a lot of time alone and in a foreign place trying to breathe. So that brought a lot of self-assurance and reliance on. Like when you have an asthma attack and it's really bad and you have pneumonia and you're sitting in the hospital and you're, you know, 7 years old, it's scary and you have to remain calm because once you start freaking out, you can't breathe because anxiety affects the lungs. So I learned to stay calm at a very young age. I became a Christian when I was 6. I went to a small church that was called Berean Baptist. The pastor, I believe, ran away with his secretary. But before he did that, he gave a what do they call it, a benediction every time. And I heard about it, and I was thinking a lot about hell and fear and things like that. And I remember thinking about it for a whole week. And I asked my mom, and mom said, "No, you're too young. Don't do it." And I asked my older brother, and he was like, "Oh, totally do it, dude." And then from
Always your best interest at heart from
yeah,
your older brother,
always,
yes.
always, yeah, that guy. So the Sunday came around, and I decided to walk it. My brother actually elbowed me, and he's like, "Do it, do it." So I walked down, and then got baptized the next week. And ever since then, I have believed. So I have been a Christian for a very, very long time, and through that, I have seen my faith go up and down and be tested in coming to different understandings of God, Christ, and the Holy Spirit.
One of the questions that I often ask is in
Hmm.
that early time, let's say, maybe before the age of reason, before,
Hmm.
13, 14, something like that. Was it real for you, or like internally, hey, we got puppies.
Yeah, yeah, I got
Yeah,
two dogs. You can hear them.
it's all good. Not a problem. What I'm trying to get at is, like, was it something that you were following your parents and your family, or for you, was it something that drove you, like that you
Oh,
felt was
yeah,
real
it was
inside you?
something. There was something definitely inside me. Uh, I would remember defending the faith with my friends in high school. We would talk about that. And I remember a lot of times they would say, "Hey, at least you believe something."
Mhm.
You were that sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
Tom and Ted and everybody who are very atheists, or I guess scientifically minded. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
so I always felt like I was a stranger in the group when it came to my faith and my belief, but it was always something that I believed, and I read the Bible on my own, and then I went to youth group and learned the verses and tried to integrate into that whole society. But I lived both in and out of it. But it was always internal. It's like my faith in God never ceased. It got to a point, I think, in my early 20s that it was like I basically, it was so integrated into me that I don't think I have a choice to believe or not. It's part of my fundamental system.
I completely understand
Okay,
that.
cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I truly, you and I haven't had this conversation
Yeah.
of like this at this level of depth, but
Mhm.
I really do understand
Okay, cool.
and respect that. So it's interesting. I want to comment on the, empirically, scientifically minded. What's interesting to me, my subjective experience was I didn't have a way to describe it at the
Hmm.
time. I think I was kind of a natural skeptic, all of my
Oh yeah.
life, but I didn't think of myself as, oh, I'm conducting science here. Right.
Right.
I was just naturally skeptical. And now today, yeah, I kind of put that spin on things that makes sense to me in my world. But had you asked me at the time, I would not have said I'm an atheist at all. Right. I don't know what I believed back in that time period.
Right.
But so that's been the journey for me. But yeah, you picked the right friends. You had the you had the friend group that was not the most religious crowd ever.
Yeah, and it helped me. You guys, that group really brought out critical thinking in me, and also to know all the words to my Python before ever the Holy Grail before ever watching the show itself.
That's
But it
right.
was like, it was I mathematically, scientifically inclined. Those guys were incredibly smart, and it stretched me to keep up with them, and also to really build that critical thinking that they don't teach in school, or I don't know if you really can teach it except to observe and absorb through your friends.
So another thing that you mentioned was youth group. So
Hmm.
again, there was part of your life that I just wasn't a part of. So what worked for you as a teenager at youth group, and maybe what didn't?
Well, I think there was an accepting nature of everybody. I was a very hyperactive kid too. I was taking a lot of medication for my lungs, and that affects whatever affects your lungs affects your heart. And so my heart was always beating faster, and I was naturally energetic to the point now that I'm older. Well, I'll tell you what, I was so hyperactive that I was grateful when I got sick because it slowed me down to the normal level of everybody else. That's when I
Yeah.
felt the most normal. So I was always the kid. They were always doing, like, the older kids were like, ditch Mark. They try to run through the church and get rid of me or whatever like that. And I thought it was a game. I didn't really realize they wanted. Or when we played hide and go seek, I was always the best hider, and it was because no one looked for me. I'd come back in my house, and everybody would be watching Scooby Doo. But there was a core group of my age that was very accepting and just brought me in, and it was a very nice, kind group and focused on God. More so than that, I've found this with these guys who have since gone on to do missionary work and pastoral work and stuff from this group of ours that I haven't found in other youth groups that I've attended or helped lead and stuff like that, where they break up and go apart. But that core group was really into God, and I feel that I could feel that now and see that at the end of our lives now, where they've gone and how they've operated that. But they grew up in the church, where I grew up in faith, but outside the church, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Well, it was like being an outsider because all the kids went to the same church and then they went to the same grade school. They went
Okay.
to a Christian school that was part of the church.
Right.
So they all knew each other since like third grade or second grade, like we did. I came in around seventh grade, and my parents had split up. So I was the divorcee kid,
Yeah.
and which was a lot different from their lifestyle and what they knew.
I don't know that I really understood that. I'm sure we've had that conversation, but like I'm hearing it now, and it's like, wow, that would have been difficult.
Yeah, I was between two worlds, I guess you can say. But the only constant was my faith between those two worlds.
You mentioned leading, so we if we jump forward to my time as a youth pastor,
Sure.
and I joked with you that we can talk about what an ass I was. What was your experience of that time when we were at assembly and trying to lead youth groups? What was that like for you?
It was weird. I enjoyed it. I ended up finding my own niche in the action house where I would do a lot of the plays and stuff like that. And that was usually when you were gone. You were definitely the golden child. I remember being Cliff's assistant until you came back, and then you became Cliff's assistant. And it was brought to my attention, like, why did they do that? That's not fair. And it never even crossed my mind. It's like, well, Davey went to school, he came back, and that's the whole plan. I was, I don't know. There was a lot going on that time. I was working like three jobs. I was trying to go to school, and I was doing all the stuff in the church. I have a pervading feeling through most of my life, probably until the last several years, last 3 years or so, of this constant feeling of you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
And it was, you're doing it wrong in friendships, you're doing it wrong at job, you're doing it wrong in school, you're doing it wrong in everything, even in my faith. You're just doing it wrong. So I think that's a lot of how I felt. It was one of the happiest times of my life, despite all the work in the school and everything like that. But it was weird. I made weird relationship decisions, just trying to trying to sort my way through that time, and feeling like I was always making poor decisions. And I look back now and say, yeah, they were poor decisions, and I probably wouldn't have acted the same way as I did back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I have, obviously a weird view of that time in my life too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like assembly in particular was a bit infantilizing, treating us like children when we were
Definitely.
adults. And Action House, I maybe should have you describe it. What was Action House for people who have no idea what you're talking about?
Action House was so weird and so cool at the same time. It was a monthly thing on a Saturday night where we put on performances, and we do these like I think they called them like live music videos, where I would get up on stage and I'd lip sync a song, and they would have performances behind it. Then we had dancers, and then we had skits, and it was meant to be a time where kids could to do something else, to come in and have people enjoy themselves and be entertained, and then hear a message from God.
Yeah.
And we did that for like 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, it went on for a while. Yeah.
But I got to act, and that was a lot of fun. I really, really
Yeah.
enjoyed. I felt like it was fun. I enjoyed it, but it was weird. It was definitely 80s style lights and music and scene action and stuff.
One of the things that I comment about these days is, what is hard to find in the secular world is a place where you can use whatever your talents or your interests are. So, like,
Okay.
you want to act, you want to be in a skit, you want to do some comedy, you enjoy putting on a show, what have you.
You want to try to do some comedy.
That's right. Yeah.
You try.
Yeah. But as an adult, outside of that church context, there really aren't opportunities to do that. Like if you're a singer, right? Where do you get to sing?
All right.
Outside of that context, and that is something I think that was actually really good. It was an opportunity for people to participate, to do stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And I went on acting after that too. I did, several plays and stuff, and
nice, yeah.
starred in nurse training videos, things like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I went off to college and I came back. I was there briefly. My listeners kind of know the story that I had a relationship that the church frowned upon, and then I was gone.
I totally forgot.
Yeah, that was a big deal for me, right? Like that was a defining moment in my life because
Sure.
that was not the end of faith for me. Like I was absolutely still in, but it definitely changed the trajectory of my life. So I'm curious, after that point, I don't even really know where you were at that point. I think, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but like, I think you had an accident in here at some point.
I was in traction. Yeah, I too had a relationship that the church frowned upon greatly. At one point,
Okay.
Cliff said, he stopped himself halfway through. He's like, "Mark, you're running with," and I go, "You're running with the devil." And he's like putting a Van Halen song at me.
Yes.
So it's like, there was no help there in that. It was just, you're doing it wrong. And a lot of it, and there was no, like, I remember Cliff saying something like, "I'll be your accountability partner and we'll keep you accountable." But it was more like, felt like a big brother instead of a supporting, healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Got my eye on you, when like the boss talks to you, it's never good. It's never good because they want to bring up something that you're doing wrong.
No news is good news.
Yeah, no news is good news. So I was in a motorcycle accident. It broke my shin bone. Lady turned in front of me while I was going straight. She made a left-hand turn across the lane, and it crushed my leg, the tibia and the tibia and fibula. Completely crushed. It took me about a year and a half to be able to limp normally. I was in a wheelchair for a month. I had 7 surgeries. I was on a walker. I was on crutches. I used a cane for over a year. And during that time, okay, I'm going to share this. So I was dating a girl at the time. Well, we had just broken up. She broke up with me for another guy I was friends with. And then she came in the hospital. I remember thinking, like, I just want to talk to her. I just want to talk to her. And so she came to the hospital, and as I recall now, I'm high on morphine. I was in there for 2 weeks, but she goes, "Don't even think I'm going to feel sorry for you and get back together again, because this is over." I was like, and my mom was in the room, and I'm like,
ouch.
Yeah, that was like class act. So she bailed, and then during that time, I had several of my ex-girlfriends come and revisit me, and I'm like, I think I was 29 at the time, 28, 29 years old. And that was a real, just like, here, I don't know if they came to gloat or pity or what, but it was very, very awkward to be trapped with bars sticking out of your legs to stabilize it so it doesn't like fall off your body, and have women who have some type of beef with you come into the room and talk to you while you're high on morphine. It was a bad trip. So there was that, and then I went by myself. I ended up having to stay with my mom because I didn't have any income then, because I couldn't work anymore, and I ended up getting Social Security disability because I couldn't work. And then I moved out shortly after that because my mom, God rest her soul, was just a toxic person to live with.
Hmm.
And so I ended up doing the rest of my healing, living in a studio apartment in, San Luis Obispo. But during that time, I watched a ton of Simpson cartoons, and then when I got bored with that, I ended up learning how to play the guitar and writing the book. So, or writing a portion of the book. But it was a time of just isolation. But I felt, it felt very, very alone because you came and saw me once, and then no one else from the church that I spent years with ever rang me at all.
Yeah.
So you felt abandoned. I lost a community. I lost tons of stuff. But yeah, it was a trying time.
So I wanted to do another check in here. You've had the accident. It's a pretty dark time. A loss of community. People you thought were supportive weren't quite as supportive, including me.
Mm-hmm.
What was your relationship with God like at that time?
Not so great. I know I believe, but I wasn't actively. I mean, I always have an open dialogue with God. It was like how I prayed. I just talked and talked. But it wasn't like it is now where I'm growing, pursuing, and learning. So it was a dark time, and that lasted for a while, up until I guess maybe like 6, 7 years ago. I would try to go to church, but not always. Didn't my wife's job took us to when I met her back in early 2000s. Went to Colorado, didn't have a church to get to, and I was really really gun shy about going to church because
Yeah.
how it all collapsed before. And then we moved to Virginia for her work, and I was called a trailing spouse. I was just like following her around. And I went to church a couple of times, but I would always talk to God, and I would talk about to God. And then I really talk about God when I started drinking. I would like get a buzz on.
Okay.
And it's just talk, talk, talk. But I don't think that was a healthy or progressive or a proper spiritual lifestyle for me. It was,
Okay.
I would say that was my dark ages when I was still believing and yet not really seeking. And that changed back in, we moved back here in 2016. So probably like 2015, a year before we moved back home. I remember like, I really need to talk to God, and I don't know how to pray anymore.
Hmm.
Not really. So I won't say a voice said, but I had the idea when I said that to myself of just doing the Lord's Prayer. So I started doing the Lord's Prayer, and I memorized it. And then just anytime I wanted to pray, I would say that prayer. And that was, starting my prayer life on shaky legs,
Okay.
I guess you could say. So my faith wasn't altered, but my relationship was, if that makes sense. I still knew that I was saved. I still knew I trusted grace, but I felt like there was no real connection, and God just kept on doing things to me. And now I've come to the point where I see that God does things for me.
Okay.
So good or bad that comes my way, it's for my benefit. The verse, all things work to the good of those who love God. But I really started understanding that when I became a father, and being like, no, you can't run the street. And all my son thinks of all the stuff he can't do. Instead of saying, don't touch that, it's hot. It's no, 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 no. Instead of saying, I'm trying to guide you away from being harmed. I know in the Old Testament, a phrase that popped up over and over again during this time in my life was, so that it may go well with you. These are the laws, so it goes well with you. It's over, it repeats throughout the Old Testament. And it's like, I felt like God is saying to me, as I would say to my son, just do what you're told and trust me. And he's 14 now, and I'm still saying that to him. Just trust me, dude. Just I know what I'm
I have
talking
adult
about.
children. It never
Yeah,
changes.
yeah. It never changes. Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm afraid to tell you. Yeah, maybe when they hit 30, we'll see how that goes.
Maybe.
I didn't really know that part of your story, right? I don't think we've had these kind of. It's interesting that it was 2015 for you. That was 2015 for me. That it
Really?
was a loss of faith. But so we've been on kind of different trajectories
Right.
there. We live in different cities. We're terrible friends. We call once a year or something like that.
It's the same thing with my family. It's not
Yeah.
anything.
But from an outside observer, when you became a father, that was a transformation. You were a different human being.
Oh, really?
Again, it's just as an outside observer. So it's interesting to hear you say that as well. That was a profound part of your life as well. Obviously, I mean, obviously, everyone
Yeah.
becoming a father or a mother is a big deal. But
It gets real.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. But for you, that was a recognition of like your heavenly Father's experience, your experience with him from that perspective.
as he's gotten older and I can communicate with him, it's like when he was a baby, honestly, there was resentment. It's like all you do is cry and poop and cry and eat and poop. And it's just like, what do I get out of this relationship? And it's like, that is such the wrong attitude as a parent. But I didn't feel that connection when he was first born. My wife was just like, oh, I love him to death. I was like, he is really annoying. And he didn't sleep for the first 3 years. So it was like sleep deprivation.
Oh wow.
My sister-in-law was like, well, you get some sleep, right? And I was like, yeah, I'll get like 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. Well, you trade off on feeding, you can get, it's like, it's not the same as a straight shot of sleep. And now she has 2 kids. She's like, I'm sorry I said that. um, it was enlightening having a child. Now, even though I was pursuing that relationship with God more and more, I was still degrading in my actions. I see you say I started. We lived in a foreign country. It was very, very stressful during part of that time. We lived for a couple of years, and I highly recommend living somewhere where you're a minority for a year out of your life. Any listener out there, it will open your eyes to the people around you if you get to experience an immersion of being less welcome than the citizens of the place. So that was an eye opener, and that was growth. But growth comes a lot of times through pain and hardship and working through that. I dodged a lot of the pain or tried to avoid a lot of the pain by drinking. I started drinking more seriously to the point where it was affecting my life. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to call myself a high functioning alcoholic, but it did. The days I wouldn't drink, I would see a huge emotional fluctuation, highs, lows. And then it was affecting my relationships with my wife, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my son. And that was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was like, I've got to just cut it out. So I just cut it out. And then I stabilized. And then more growth became, and my mind became clear. And my walk stronger with God. And I think the last 3 or 4 years, I was just thinking the other day, I feel like I'm comfortable in my own skin. Finally, everything's not perfect, but I have the tools to finally take those things head on and to deal with them without. I'll tell you one thing I used to do. Today's standards, I grew up in an abusive home. Back then, I don't think it would be called abusive home. Looking back on it with today's standards, I would say, yeah, it was painful. And I always thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I deserved the punishments. I felt like it was my fault, where it wasn't my fault to be treated like that.
Yeah.
I think it went into the point of where I thought that's how God was treating me too. I
Mm.
superimpose my dad and my mom onto God, who's the other authority figure in your life, and it's doing this stuff. And where I had parents who would punish me for things, there's a heavenly Father who doesn't. Well, he does, but that's a long story. Will guide you and has your best interests in heart, not because they had a bad day or they're stressed out over money or whatever. It's there was a constant point system I was trying to live up to in every relationship I had, and I knew from the get go that I was going to lose with the point system. And those are the people I seem to choose, the people who kept score. Or maybe that's just everybody except for my son. It seems like there's a point system and you can't keep up with that. I remember having a girlfriend, meeting all her friends, and thinking, oh, so neat. He's so cute. He's so cool. He's so funny. And I remember specifically thinking, you just wait. Give it 6 months, give it a year, and you're going to be talking trash about me.
Mm.
Because I just always see the end inevitably coming. Because I'm going to say something stupid. I'm going to do something stupid. And that's just how relationships are. Unless you're with someone who accepts your stupidness, you're not going to get anywhere with that person. Unless you're vulnerable and they're vulnerable. And if you two are vulnerable, you can't help but meet and connect.
You have just described secular grace. That's my whole thing is connecting with human beings. What we're doing right here, sharing your story. You're being incredibly vulnerable. Thank you for that.
Oh, man.
And that is real. And you are not alone. You're not the only one who's experienced that. And there's somebody out there listening, going, "Damn, he's describing my life." You know what I mean?
Right
That
on.
happens all the time. I guess I'd like to hear about maybe how your beliefs have changed, or if they have. Let me start with that. Let's say from the assembly days to today, you no longer feel like God's keeping points in some way.
No, no, not at all. And which is really interesting. You started opening my eyes about that, about grace. I never really understood grace. And I was thinking about this the other day. There's such a frustration because I remember being 19 and like trying to read the Bible, reading it cover to cover, trying to understand stuff and just not getting it. And not knowing why my life kept on going downhill or not as good as I wanted it to be. And that was over and over again. I remember there's a guy at church, he doesn't remember, but he like reprimanded me at work back when I was 19 saying, what's going on? Why aren't you doing a good job? I was like, well, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I go to church and I'm trying my hardest. I'm also working 2 other jobs and carrying 18 units. It's like, well, back in my day, I was able to work full time and support 3 kids and, blah, blah, blah. So it was like, there was no mercy there. I couldn't find mercy from anybody, it felt like. Or if it was given, I couldn't receive it. And now looking back, I wish I could have got this so much sooner, but I feel like I had to go through my life and go up through the ups and downs and trudge my way through my mistakes to get to this understanding.
Mm.
I couldn't learn because it wasn't my time to learn it. And it was very, very frustrating. And maybe I'm just a really slow learner. I don't know.
I think some of us just need to learn by experience, and that can be painful.
Yeah. But it was only till just years of bad mistakes and I realized there is no way I can keep up with it. I always had a pretense that I can do it. Just give me hard. I stumbled here. I'll keep on going. I'll keep on going. And I made some really bad decisions. I ran off with a girl I knew for 2 weeks into like different states, and that didn't work out. Surprise, surprise. That was a mess. I did drinking. Thank God I stay away from drugs of any kind. But I was always pursuing that. I think the thing that changed me most dramatically was realizing that I was trying to find someone to worship me. I had this deep, and I can look back my entire life and see that I wanted someone to just adore and just live for me. And it wasn't until I woke up and I thought of it. And I was like, that's the point where things started changing for me, where I'm like, the focus is no longer on me, it's on God. And with that, I look back now and I see that it limits my expectations. It gives me a realistic view of the world, and it allows me the freedom to be myself, even if someone doesn't appreciate it. And there are times when you can do everything right and still it doesn't work out. Now, the part of that was I went to some counseling too a few years ago, and someone was like, "Do you like strawberries?" Oh no, no, it was broccoli. All right, at least in my mind, I was thinking I don't like broccoli. It's like I don't like broccoli, and the lady was like, "Well, is that the broccoli's fault?" And I'm like, "No, it's broccoli." It's like so it has nothing to do with the broccoli. It has to do with your taste buds and how you receive the broccoli. And I'm like, "Yes." It's like, "Can't you correlate that to other people?" And I'm like, "No, because there's got to be someone out there who will love me without fault."
Yeah.
I'm giving, but I'm given to get back. And now there's this. I just read it the other day. There's like a Hebrew word for act kindly. It's like I think it's hesed, and it means to love without wanting something back.
Mm.
So that's what I'm doing. You can even see it as my child, when my little baby. I was like, give me something. Except you're just taking, taking, taking. And now I live my life with my relationships to give. And if I get something back in return, that's great. And if I don't, that's okay. I can live without that. So that's a major way of how I've changed throughout my faith. That trying to keep the focus on God and not on me, and then also with pride. People, I mean, you can't see it from the microphone, but I have great hair, and people call me, like, "You got great hair," and
And I do not, listen.
but it's like I can't take pride in that because I have nothing to do with that. You can't humiliate a humble person because they're already there. So I recognize the things I have control of and what I don't have control of, and I don't take pride in them. So I guess winnowing away my pride and trying to love in a way that doesn't expect reciprocation has helped me grow as an individual. And in that, I have become much more comfortable with who I am and my interaction with others. And it feels great. Like peace like a river. It's like it really does feel like I feel like a man now, even though I'm in my 50s. It's like I finally feel like, oh, I got it. And there's more to go. I'm not done learning. Who knows what I'll learn and what will be revealed to me in a few years or a few months or tomorrow, but this is really nice. This is nice. And not everything in my life is perfect at all. I mean, I just made a career change, I became an EMT. So that's going well now, where my previous job didn't go well at all. I was a white married male in a very woke area. I don't say woke easily either, but it was like my culture did not mix well with the new culture, and
Ah,
it was very very hard. And there was a lot of discrepancies in their culture that they didn't see as difficulties, only discrepancies in my old man culture. I mean, if that makes sense. Which was a really hard learning. I stayed in that position for a few years, and it was difficult. It was very challenging, knowing there's like texts and bullying going on behind your back and stuff that you are completely unaware of.
I'm glad you mentioned the change of career to the EMT. Again, outside observer, it seems like, man, that just fits you, Mark. And like, it gives you an opportunity to really care for people in extreme situations that probably I would melt in. And so I think it's really cool that you get to do that. maybe talk just a bit more about that. Like, how's that been for you? That new job?
It's been great. I went around, I counseled about it. I talked to different people who knew me deeply and some who didn't, and said, "What do you think?" And it was unanimous because I used to volunteer as an EMT back east, which is nothing like I'm doing now. Now I'm running, they call ALS, that's advanced life support. Before it was a BLS unit that just did basic life support, splints, transports, things like that. Here, you're monitoring the person. You may have to do chest compressions. I've been doing this for a couple of weeks. I've already seen my first deceased person,
Mm.
and it's a lot. And I joked, it was like my first shift when that happened, and the person was like, "I'm sorry you had to see that." I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm dead inside." And they laughed. And it's like, well, I'm not dead inside, but there is a click. It's very strange. And it's the first time I experienced that. I'll put it to this way. I've always been good when it came to emergency situations, but I was never good at the day-to-day operations of interacting with people. My dad had a temper. And he'd fly off the handle of the smallest things. And then one day I got angry and I closed a window real hard and it shattered the window. And I was like, oh man, I got to tell my dad now. He's going to just tear into me. And I go to him and I, confess it. And I said, I did this. And he got all calm and he was like, hey, it's okay. These things happen. And that just blew my mind. It's like, that's how my dad is too. Emergency situations, dad was always good in, but when it came to the day-to-day rigmarole of life, he suffered and he didn't know how to interact with that. And I have that. And now I've gotten to the point where I can do the day-to-day and I can do and converse and act, semi-normally with people. And I get the emergency side too. And I mean, honestly, when I first did it, there was a big, I first became an EMT, there was a big earthquake in Haiti. And I'm like, I'm by myself with my wife in what could be a foreign country and on the East Coast from going on the West Coast. And I have no connection with anything except a job. And I don't want to do that. And I used to volunteer all the time, whether it was when we did karate or when we, working at the church and stuff. I like to volunteer. So she's like, want to do that? And I said, I should do that. So I did it. And I did it for a couple of years, 4 years or so. I got into it to help people. And now I want to help people, but I also don't want to be bored. And like and it's funny, everybody you meet in this field I'm in right now has ADHD.
Yeah.
They all just don't want to be bored. They're all going separate directions, a million miles an hour. They're freaking where they put things and stuff. But it's like, oh, these are my people. I get it.
Yeah.
They are made for that. Coming on a scene, figure out what you need to do it, taking the person and taking them to better help.
Yeah, uniquely qualified to handle those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's kind of
awesome.
cool.
So, Mark, you hinted about this when we were teenagers in high school. I think you and I approach the world in kind of slightly different ways. It's actually very cool that we're friends. But what I'm setting up here is, I think that you tend to have some beliefs that I don't share.
Mhm.
And I think it would be fun for us at some point in time in the future to do another episode about a subject that you come up with. I don't know what that will be, but Bigfoot, UFOs,
Bigfoot.
yeah, those kinds of things. Something that you're passionate
Thermodynamics.
about, and
Sure.
we can do the skeptic and believer thing with that if you would be interested in that. And I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Sure.
So I think that something that we can do for maybe another podcast here in the future.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that? Is that something you want to do or no?
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I've always been enthralled with the mystic world and things like that. I think I got a license plate. I have a Jeep and I call it the Slow Yeti. The license plate says Bigfoot doesn't believe in you either.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
and when I was a kid, I saw a UFO. I mean, something was in the air. We saw it. Yeah, I would love to talk about stuff like that.
All right. Great. Okay. All right. So to be continued. Before we wrap up here, though, you mentioned that you have written a book. There's also a podcast version of it. You want to talk to the people about that book? What's it about? Who might be interested in reading it?
Oh, sure. I did it during COVID. I made a serious podcast while writing the book. just to force me to finish it. If I can imagine someone's listening to me, it got me to write a couple of chapters every week. It's called Reed Keeper's Journey. You can find it on most of the podcast stations. Apple Podcasts, just search that. Reed Keeper is one word. So Reed Keeper's Journey. It's about a group of kids that go into a world where there are no men. Everybody's, or women. It's all mythical creatures. And the world starts to change them into the mythical creatures. And they have to figure out a way to get back home before they completely change. And it started in high school. I started this idea in high school because we sat around the group with the guys, and I was like, what do you think you would be if you were a mythical creature? And there was one guy who was like short and squat, and we're like, he would be a troll for sure. And it just went on from there. So I thought, oh, that was the premise of the book. And it's got different themes in it about letting go and cutting strings and moving on. But it's a little rough in the beginning. My podcasting vocal skills weren't as good as they were towards the end. I definitely developed through it. So if you can listen to the first few, it picks up pretty well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think it's a great story. I enjoyed it. So yeah, we'll definitely have links in the show notes for people to find that. Do you have any social media that you want to promote?
I don't think I'm on social media at all. No.
Okay, well then no.
I don't do
All right.
Facebook or Twitter or anything. I'm thinking about starting an Instagram with my puppy, but
Can we know what the puppy's name is? What's the puppy's name?
it's Lexi. She's
Lexi.
a rough coat collie. She's all white neck and a tricolored head. She is a little princess. The song, that Barbie girl. I'm a Barbie girl living a Barbie girl. I always sing it to her. She's a floofy girl living in a floofy world.
Mark, I think you've proved my point that people telling their life stories is powerful. So I just want to thank you for being so honest and vulnerable with us, and really appreciate you, man. I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, man. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Final thoughts on the episode. As I said in the intro, I didn't really hammer the point of honesty contest and vulnerability to Mark, but man, he brought that to the story. I mostly wanted to listen and let him tell his story, and now I get to comment on a few things. First, I am surprised by how much we have in common. I had forgotten that Mark felt like an outsider at the youth group that he attended when he was younger. He pointed out that he grew up with faith, but not in the church. And so he was with a bunch of people who were raised in the church. I had a similar experience when I came to Christianity, not having lived in the church, not having grown up in it, and coming to church seriously for the first time and being an outsider. So it's interesting that we had that common experience and we have never talked about that. The other thing I really appreciated about Mark's story is he is honest about the times where things were dark, either because of his choices or his experience of God. The quote that leapt out at me was, "There was no real connection, and God kept on doing things to me. And now I have come to the point where I see God does things for me." Again, I feel like that's truly honest and beautiful. And I'm glad that things have turned around for Mark. As I mentioned in the interview, I think Mark and I will go on to do a couple more episodes on topics that he is interested in. In this conversation, I was just here to listen. In a conversation where we are maybe in more of a debate setting, I will be a bit more aggressive, but always hopefully friendly, and hopefully we can make things funny. So looking forward to that. We'll see if there's an appetite for that. I want to thank Mark for being on the podcast, for sharing his life story, for being honest with us. Thank you, Mark. Love you as a brother. The secular grace thought of the week is about grace. Mark really described it so well. He talked about that he seemed to choose people who kept score, or maybe that's everyone, he said. And I think that he is absolutely right, that we human beings tend to keep score, and what we really crave is grace, someone to love us, everything that's good about us, everything that's bad about us, all of our faults, to just care for us. I talk a lot about the ABCs of secular spirituality, and the B and the C, the belonging to a group and the connection, is what Mark was just describing. Being connected to another human being where you can be authentically yourself, warts and all, and have that person still care about you is one of the most powerful things there can be. Mark himself described it. Unless you're vulnerable and they are vulnerable, and if you too are vulnerable, you can't help but meet and connect. That connection is grace, is love between human beings from my perspective. And I believe that it is a basic human drive and need. Until next time, my name is David, and I am trying to be the graceful atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. If you want to get in touch with me to be a guest on the show, email me at gracefulatheist@gmail.com. For blog posts, quotes, recommendations, and full episode transcripts, head over to gracefulatheist.com. This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast.